How to buy a house. That's exactly what we're going to be going over today. This is going to be unscripted. I'm thinking maybe we can use like an example of purchasing a house, and that way we can go like step by step, what to expect, what to look for, and pretty much how much things are going to be. So, how to buy a house. Kind of run into this problem a lot. A lot of people really don't know where the first step. I mean, they don't teach you this at school. They don't even teach this in the universities. So I'm going to give it to you for free, and you can do what you want with it. So let's jump into it. How to buy a house. Where can we start? I guess for you guys to know, how long does it take for a house to buy? I mean, let's create a timeline. So this is the house that we bought, and it's going to take us all the way here to close. This takes about 35 to 45 days. That's how long it typically takes. We can close sooner. It all depends if everything goes smoothly, but typically that's how long it takes. So for example, let's start off with, let's buy a house, I don't know, 200,000. Let's buy a house for 200,000. We find that's how much it's going to be. So I know a lot of people, when it comes really down to it, is how much? How much is it going to be? What do I need to pay for? So that's something else that I really want to go over with. So before we kind of jump into the process, let's look exactly what you're looking at right now. So at 200,000, right now we have three types of loans that we have. We have FHA, which is probably the most popular. And then we have conventional. I'm just going to put CON just to abbreviate it. And the other one is VA. So FHA is 3.5% of 200,000 of the purchase price. So if it was 220, it'll be 3.5% of 220, for example. The other one is going to be 5%, and VA is going to be 0% down. That you have to be a veteran in order to qualify for this loan. Other than that, the most popular is 3.5. So 3.5% of 200,000 is 7,000. So right off the bat, we're going to pay $7,000 for the down payment. We're just going to use, let's just go for example at 3.5, 5%. That's 10,000. Is it 7,000? Yeah. Okay. So that's your down payment, but there's also closing costs involved. And closing costs are people who are involved in the purchase. So when you're purchasing a house, there's going to be the realtor, title company, and lender. So these are the three parties that you're going to be dealing with when purchasing a house. The realtor obviously is going to be there to open up the house, negotiate the deal, and then give you all the information that you need to go to this process. The title company is there to transfer the title from one owner onto the new owner. And not just that, they're also providing insurance on the title. Just to dive in a little more on the title, what's happening is that the seller, when you buy a house, you want the title to be clean. And by clean, I mean there's no liens on it. So the seller could, I don't know, for example, didn't pay a worker or a laborer that did some roof job on the house and never paid him. So now he has a mechanical lien on his property, meaning he owes that man money. So what the title company does, they find that and they say, hey, seller needs to pay, Daniel, X amount of money before we can transfer that title onto the new buyer. The title company not only transfers it, but also provides that clean title, meaning, hey, there's no liens on this property, and provides insurance for the title, meaning when you decide to go sell it and Daniel's names pop up again that, hey, you need to pay him for the roof job, you say, no, the title company, they gave me a clean title, this is their contact, here's the insurance, and so forth. The next person is the lender. This is the person who's going to find you the package to buy the house. Either FHA, conventional, or VA. There's also other types of programs out there that you can qualify for. That the lender will know more of it. So On top of your down payment, you're going to pay closing costs. And by closing costs, meaning you're going to pay the title company and you're going to pay the lender. These people, they have fees. They're not going to do it for free. They spend, about a week, 2 weeks on working on your file. So time is money, and that's what closing costs are going to go for. So, for example, 200,000. It varies. Every closing cost is never the same. You can buy three $200,000 houses, and closing costs will always be a little bit different. But for this sake, we're buying this house. We're gonna say $5,000 in closing costs. I think that's fair. This is in South Texas. I'm Corpus Christi, more precise. So we're looking at that. So right off the bat, you're looking at $12,000 when you're going to go to the close date. Closing costs are negotiable, so we can always ask the seller to help you out with the closing costs. Some sellers pay all of closing, some don't, but it's negotiated. So we're going to negotiate this deal at $200,000. So let's see, where would we start? So we find a house, it's $200,000. You know that closing cost is going to be $5,000, but we're going to go ahead and ask for $5,000 in closing costs from the seller when we submit the offer. So we submit an offer for $200,000 and we ask for $5,000 in closing. Seller counters back and said, "Hey, I accept your offer at $200,000, but I'm not going to pay the whole $5,000. I'm going to pay. Let's make it easier. I'm going to pay $3,000." So we're going to subtract $3,000 because that's what's going to be covered by the seller. So now it's $2,000. So essentially, right? Yeah, okay. So now your closing cost roughly is going to be about $2,000 plus the $7,000 for your down payment. That leaves you at $9,000. So we're going to subtract this by $3,000, and now you are left with $9,000 to closing costs. You find the house, you agreed, he agrees, "Hey, I'll pay you $3,000 in closing costs." Everything's good. Now the next step, we fall into what's called option period. But actually, we're going to back up a little bit because we do have to talk about earnest money. And the two checks that we're going to be writing. We got earnest and option. Earnest money is a promise that you're going to buy the house. Essentially, it's that's pretty much telling the seller, "Hey, I promise that I'm going to buy your house." And typically, the earnest money is either 1% or $1,000, whichever greater. But a lot of people do accept $1,000. This $1,000 does go to your closing costs. So if you put in $1,000, this will go into $8,000. Option money is $100. And this pays for the time that you are allowed to do inspections. So typically option period is about 10 days. So we're going to say right about here. This is your option period. This is when it ends. Option period starts the day after it's been escrowed. And by escrowed, meaning that the buyer and seller have agreed, they've signed, and the contract has been delivered to the title company. And they're going to stamp it, and they're going to send it out and say, "Hey, the party is escrowed, is legally binded." The earnest money is written out to the title company, and the option is written out to the seller, which buys the time, this period. This time is when we're allowed to do inspections, any inspections that you want, and yes, we go ahead and we negotiate again on repairs. If you guys do not come into an agreement during option period, that $1,000 will be returned to you. But if you decide to back out, you got cold feet somewhere towards closing, like 2-3 days before, you will lose this earnest money. There are other ways to get this money back out of option period, but that's like, for example, if your financing fell through. And I'll go more into details once we get into this section. But typically what happens if we don't come to terms in option period, you'll get that earnest money back. So we're in option period. We've already delivered the checks to the title company, which need to be delivered to them within less than 3 days once the contract has been signed by the buyer and seller. So the option I'm going to recommend was 3 inspections that every realtor strongly recommends. So they are general, hydrostatic, and termite. The general is essentially a general inspector who's trained has a big, broad of knowledge of all things inside the house. And I mean, essentially they look at everything that's wrong with the house. If the paint's chipping, a faceplate is crooked, they're going to call that out. But mostly what we try to look at is major things, electrical, foundation, roof, any kind of major things, pretty much. So general does cost between, here in Texas, costs, I don't know, like $250 to $300, depending on the size of the house. The hydrostatic is where we test the plumbing to see if there's any leaks, and that typically costs between $90 to $110. The next one is the termite, which again, that one's about the same, about $90 to $110. This is paid at service during option period. And you're like, oh, so this is non-refundable, including with your option period. We strongly recommend you do these inspections, not only because we're able to negotiate repairs when we receive information from these inspections. A lot of people, or some people, they don't want to spend this money, but this is a due diligence on the buyer's side. For example, the general inspector could find some kind of, I don't know, roof damage that costs $5,000, but since you didn't spend the $250 or the $300 on it, by the time you find out that you have a roof problem, that $5,000 repair has turned into a $10,000 repair, and it can continue to get bigger and bigger. So that's why it's best to get this repaired, because that $5,000 repair job could be negotiated in option period and be repaired by the end of closing. The hydrostatic, again, that's just testing the plumbing if there's no leaks. For example, essentially what they do is they fill up all the lines with water, and they just see if the water drops or not. If it drops, there's a leak. After there are other tests, which is an isolation test, which they essentially isolate certain parts of the house to find exactly where the leak is. And then they just dig underneath and go straight to that spot. Termite, $90 to $110. Not all of them always have to be tinted. Some things can be spot treated. So let's just do an example here on this house that we're buying for $200, and right now we're paying $9,000. So let's see, what can we think of? Let's say in the general, he called out some electrical problems, and what else did he call out? Called electrical problems. Let's do this. We found some electrical problems and there's termites. The hydrostatic passed, so that's good. So the next step from there, so when we look at the general, we see that needs some electrical work, so we're just going to go ahead and call an electrician, and he's going to go out there and write a bid for you guys. And that, again, that is during option period. So let's say, for example, the electrical work comes out to $700. The termite, it's a spot treatment, so it's not that much. So we're going to say $300. And another item maybe that came out in the general, maybe in one of the rooms, there was carpet and there was like a big stain, and we're going to ask for that. And we're going to ask for the carpet to be replaced. So that's what we're essentially going to ask. We'll ask for pretty much $1,000 in repairs and the carpet to be replaced. We'll go ahead and we'll write that up in an amendment, and we'll send that off to the seller. Seller looks at it, says, hey, look, I don't want to deal with the carpet, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to fix the electrical, I'm going to do the termite, and then I'm going to give you guys $500 for the carpet. So instead of the carpet to be replaced, he's going to credit you guys or credit the buyer $500. So he's going to do $1,000 worth of repairs, and then he's going to give you $500, meaning we're going to subtract it from here. So now you're going to bring in $8,500. And that is saying that $500 that you're bringing less, you're going to use that money to go ahead yourself, go replace that carpet. It doesn't always have to be like that. I'm just saying this is just an example of what we're doing. So once terms are agreed upon, all this has to be done before the end of option period, which is again 10 days, 10 to 12 days. If the electrical bid was going to come in a day later, or the electrician won't be able to go out till the following day, like a day after option period, we can always extend a day or two. So that's not a problem. And again, that earnest money is protected in this period. So for example, the seller did not come to terms, say, hey dude, I don't want to do this. I'm already giving you $3,000 in closing costs. I don't want to put another $1,000. Then you can go ahead and back out, and then you will receive that earnest money back. But for this case, seller has agreed. He's going to do the $1,000 repairs for the electrical and the termite, and he's going to credit you $500. So once that's all agreed on, the next step, it goes into pending. Oops. This is this bar all the way to here, pretty much. I'll get here a little later. So the pending, that's when you and the lender, you're going to be in contact almost every other day. Y'all are going to be submitting paperwork, signing paperwork. And the reason why the bank doesn't start working on your file and getting your loan process is because sometimes we don't come to an agreement on here. Every seller is different, every buyer is different. So it's best once we agree terms, the bank will start working on your loan. These repairs don't have to be done before option period. They just have to be done by closing. You will receive paid invoices, receipts, warranty, whatever work is done or whatever work you've asked for, that will be all provided to you by the end of closing. And not only that, there's going to be a day where, let me write it, I'm going to see if there's room here. Final. The final walkthrough. So this typically is about a day or two before closing, and that's where we walk and make sure the house is still there. Didn't catch on fire, didn't get blown away by a hurricane or something like that. We go walk the property, and for example, let's say we walk in the property and one of the doors has a hole in it, and it wasn't there when we first walked it. When we first walked in and said, hey, this is the house, there was no hole there. So we can go ahead and ask